Hi, everyone. Welcome to yet another monthly EVCO meeting. So welcome to the February monthly EVCO meeting. Today, we're going to have a, we can make this thing work. I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Oh, wrong screen. There we go. So once again, I'd like to thank CAA for providing some sponsorship money last year to wrap the EVX trailer. The agenda for today is we have Rolly here today. Rolly, well, I'll let him introduce himself, but Rolly is a guy who's been doing some work for a while in the environmental activism field, and he's going to talk about the ZEV regulations, which we did talk about last meeting. If you remember correctly, Mitchell did a presentation on it. But there's a few calls to action because, as you remember from the discussion, there's some things that are not as stringent as they could be, if I could put it that way, with the regulations that are being proposed. And we're looking to try to get some people to provide some feedback to the government to counteract, in particular, the feedback that the auto manufacturers are giving to the government, right? So, as we'll get to that when we talk to Rolly after we've gone through the agenda. So the next piece will be Mike will talk about a mentor program for new owners. So what we're looking at doing this year is having a formal mentor program where people who have bought an EV will be able to get some guidance from someone from EVCO to look at topics like charging on the road and other topics that may be of interest to new owners, right? So we're finding that as things progress, the people who are buying EVs aren't necessarily well versed in EV world. So the early adopters were all people who really researched the products and all that and knew what was what. And we're finding that the newer owners are less aware. And we expect that as market share continues to increase exponentially, that we'll have more and more people who don't know some of the basics. And you may have seen on Facebook in particular, I've seen many situations lately where people were calling out, asking questions that were relatively newbie type questions. But if you don't know, you don't know. And an electric car is definitely different from a gas car. So there are differences to know about. And unfortunately, the dealers in particular, the salespeople are not doing a great job to convey that to consumers. So we're going to try to fill that gap. And Mike's going to talk a bit about that, and we'll have a more formally developed program for next meeting. Then Mike is going to go and talk about the news again, like he usually does. A lot of interesting stuff happening in EV world over the last month. A huge amount of stuff happening. Then I'm going to talk about something that went through the OEB last year. It's the ultra low overnight rate that they passed. I'll explain how that works. And I'll give an example with calculations for my own electricity bill. So when we get there, you'll see that it provides some interesting opportunities. Then we'll do, like usual, talk about past and future events. We have quite a few events lined up. We'll talk about the ones that are coming short term, and then we'll go to roundtable as usual. Okay.
Okay. First of all, I mean I know Raymond, but I don't think I know anyone else on the call in the meeting. So I'll introduce myself. Rolly Montelier. I now live in Ottawa in CARP actually, and I've been I've been a climate activist now for since I retired. That's some 20 years ago, and my online brand name is Below 2C, which is obviously based on the Paris Agreement. We have to stay well below 2C, so that's kind of my social media handle and the name of my website. In Ottawa, I'm involved with a lot of different groups as an organizer, and of course on the street and various speaking occasions and demonstrations and marches and so on. So kind of cover the broad spectrum of climate activism. About a year ago, I got involved with Climate Messengers. Now, Climate Messengers is a very small group and basically gets together whenever, government comes up with policy or legislation, and there's a consultation process where they're requesting feedback or comments. And we started doing this with Bill C-12. Now that was, I think, the Zero Emissions Act way back then. And in fact, if you look at the website you're looking at here, where I'm sort of circling government consultations, well, those are some of the consultations where we have gathered, and we have a lawyer who's very passionate. I mean, you have to be a lawyer to be passionate about regulations. I mean, I can't stand reading about regulations because they're so they're pretty dry stuff. But he's a lawyer and he just loves to do this. So he's kind of the principal author, I guess, lead author of these toolkits that we put together. And my role is I contribute, but my role also is to do some technical work on the toolkits. So, so from Climate Messengers, as I said, there are 3 or 4 of us. We have a video coming out to promote this consultation process. And by promote, the reason we do this is to facilitate feedback and participation by people like ourselves, like myself, and even people who are not in the climate field, but who want to share their comments with government. So toolkits like this facilitate that, because basically all the grunge work is done, and one can pick from the toolkit, or change some of the sample answers that we have in there in their own words, and it becomes a valuable resource for them, for anyone to use. So so this is a little, all I'm going to say about Climate Messengers. You can see right in the sort of the top half here, there's this banner that keeps changing, and this particular consultation, of course, is all about zero emission vehicle, and these are the draft regs that the government has released, and now follows, of course, the consultation period until March the 16th. So once you're on this page, there's a learn how to participate button here. So that when you click on that, it gets you basically to this. Okay, so this is some of the background here, the context, and I've already talked a little bit about that. The draft regulations, once they come into law, will actually set sales mandates for vehicles starting in 2026. 2026, the percentage is 20%. Sales have to be ZEVs. Then it goes up, I think, to 60-some% by 2030, and then 100% by 2035. And as I said, there's the public consultation process, which we're going to get into in a minute. This, I think, is in part of our executive summary. We're emphasizing the fact that this is a really good thing that our government is doing, coming up with these ZEV sales mandates. However, we do point out that the sales mandates are too lenient, they're too slow, and we'll get into some of the things that need strengthening. But certainly, the first thing is to start with the congratulatory portion of what the government is doing. And of course, there are, as I said, shortcomings, which I'm going to get into. Now, this is the toolkit. Do you see now the actual?
Yes. No.
Okay. So I'm going to skip the executive summary because I've already talked about that. What you want to look at in the toolkit, like I said, the executive summary is a good, it's a good summary. It's good to start there. But I'm going to go right to the table of contents, and the table of contents is the guide of how to get around. This is a large toolkit. It's 30 some pages. So none of you, I would imagine, will read it from, page 1 to page 31. But this will guide you through the executive summary we've already talked about, but why we need ZEV regulations. And I guess I'll scroll down because this is bookmarked here. If you click, for example, on why you need ZEV regulations, and you click on the bookmark, well, it'll get you down here. It'll get you to that spot in the document where you're looking for that specific information. So why do we need ZEVs? Well, I think, we don't really have to spend a whole lot of time on that. I mean, the transportation field in Canada is second to, accounts for about 25% of Canada's emissions. And of that 25%, about half, or 12%, is emissions from what the ZEV refers to as light-duty vehicles. Those are our cars, our light trucks, and SUVs. So that's a pretty big chunk of our emissions that is basically low-lying fruit as we move into clean cars as opposed to internal combustion engines, the ICE vehicles. And the only emissions that are greater in Canada actually is from the gas and oil production itself. That accounts for about 26%, a quarter of our emissions from oil and gas, not from the burning, but for the processing and for the well, not manufacturing, but the production of and transportation of oil and gas. The burning, of course, a lot of times takes place elsewhere, and we don't really account for that. But this goes through, why we need the ZEV sales mandate. There's a chart here that explains what I've just, basically explained. The blue is the oil and gas industry, and the gold down here and gray is transportation. And the ones the ZEV deal with is strictly this gold part, which is about 12% of our emissions. Again, there's a quote here from the Canadian Climate Institute, and they have come up with some pretty good supporting information on ZEVs. And they say this article refers to ZEV mandates are good climate policy because they work, and they go through, the article actually outlines why they work and how they work, for example, in California and BC and Quebec, and about 7 other jurisdictions, I think, in the U.S., which has ZEV mandates, sales mandates. So you'll want to go through all that, and there's a lot of interesting charts and backup down here that explains, which provinces, for example, are doing better at the sale of ZEVs, and the ones that are doing the best, of course, are BC and Quebec because they have ZEV regulations, and the rest of Canada does not. There's a chart below here, and again, I'm not going to go through that. I just want you to be aware of what's in here. And this part here with all the fancy ads, now this is some of the resistance that's coming from automakers. I mean, we're seeing ads in the papers and from their lobbyists. If the auto sector had its way, there would be no ZEV mandate. They do not want this, and if they can't block them entirely, well, of course, they're going to want to water them down as much as possible. One of the issues is highlighted in here by some of these photos and charts. Like the wait for a Hyundai Ioniq 5 is between 18 and 24 months. So one of the issues is affordability, of course, but it's also waiting times. I mean, I got a Nissan Leaf this year, and I was lucky enough to get it fairly quickly. But then I had been waiting 16 months for another vehicle that I had ordered, thinking that I wanted an SUV. That's when I still had my lakefront property. But once we sold that, we knew we didn't need that anymore, so I canceled that order. And I was ready to wait another 13, 14 months, I guess, for a Leaf. But then Leaf, Nissan has freed up a bunch of Leaf vehicles in the fall, and I was able to get one of them. But all this to say, again, the document outlines waiting times, affordability issues, and so on. Again, why you need to participate in public consultation? Well, I think the evidence is clear. If nobody participates, the automakers will argue that there should be no ZEVs at all. And in fact, they have been at it for about 3 years now, since 2020, with lobby groups showing or trying to show that the future of ZEVs or electric vehicles is not bright. And there's even information in here that shows, I think it's about only 2% of all car dealerships in Canada, at least at that particular date, whenever that was, had an electric vehicle in the shop for someone to see. So basically, you're buying from a catalog when it comes to ZEV vehicles. So as I scroll through this, and again, you can get through these sections when you're in the table of contents, but I'm just facilitating this for presentation. Now, section number 4 is very important because this is an overview of what to consider commenting on in your submission. And what we've done here is we've shown there are 2 bad features to Environment Canada that they have to improve. I mean, in my own submission, which I finished today, I still haven't submitted it, I started off with the 2 good features. And then I went to the 2 bad features. You can pick it whatever order you want. This, again, is we're highlighting some of the shortcomings, and we're highlighting some of the strengths of the regs. And then there's another 3 or 4 issues here that we're just saying, well, maybe you want to think about that. For example, should there be regional ZEV sales requirements? Also, our hybrid, plug-in hybrids, which are not fully electric, should they have the same weighing in the evaluation, in the application of this reg? And this is like, it's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of the other. In rural areas, for example, it might be a lot more difficult for someone to buy a battery EV, but that person might be more inclined to buy a plug-in hybrid. And of course, maybe that doesn't get you all the way to electric, but it gets you part of the way. And one might argue it's better than staying with gas. So other factors you could include in your presentation. And then there's backup information to those that I've just highlighted, the strengths and weaknesses. And it's all down here, and I don't want to take up. Very easy to follow, folks. You just kind of want to go through this at your own leisure. And what I want to get to now, before I take some questions, is now how in the world do you get, okay, maybe just how to submit your comment. Okay. Now, this is a bit confusing, and unfortunately, what the government has done here, I like the format they had for some of the other consultations we worked on with the toolkit. Here, what they do is they send you to this website, and it's the Canada Gazette website. Now, when you go to this website, and I'll do that right now, it's basically it provides all of the information that's in the reg, and it allows you to make comments. But it's kind of confusing, and I'll show you why. You can also just go to an email, and that's what I've done. I'm using an email and sending it to this address, and this way you can prepare your comments. You can prepare them any way you want. You can have short, point form comments. You can have some. I've kind of done a mini submission, I guess, using the toolkit as a guideline and stressing, the good, the bad, what needs improvement, and so on. So I would recommend that you go to this email address to do your submission, but certainly take a look at the Gazette portion, because there's a lot of good information there, and then there's a slot to put a comment in, and you can save your draft. But I've saved it once when I was half done, and then I could never get back to it. So again, I strongly suggest that at least or you do it on in a doc in a word processing document before you put it in here, because I ended up losing part of my feedback. Yeah, so I've gone to the email version, and we've also provided some sample answers right at the end here. Sample answers, for example, general answers, but then 2 bad features to tell Environment Canada to improve, sample answers, and then 2 good features to praise, sample answers again, and 2 features to think about, sample answers. Now, you can use the sample answers word for word, but I think that the algorithm they use to analyze all of the comments that they get back, they don't have anybody, I think, just like actually reading all this. It's all done by textual analysis of some sort. So it's important that you use your own words. I've kind of used some quotes from this, but the sample answers give you a pretty good idea of how to respond to the document. I think, Raymond, I'm going to stop there. Oh, I wanted to go back just to show you back here, the Gazette. Yeah. Well, okay. Just go to the link on your own, and it'll again. That's one of the ways to respond. The other way is by email. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go right back up to the table of contents right here. And in the table of contents under number 7, how to submit your comments, sample answers. So this is all easily accessible. And I'll stop there because I've already taken about 30 minutes, Raymond, and I think you wanted to give me about that much time. So I'll take some questions if there are any.
There's a question here, Craig?
Yeah.
I didn't see you mentioned anywhere about the idea of pollution. That there's one of the things that zero emission vehicles do is clean the air in the sense of the lack of pollution. And was that anywhere in your thing about why we need ZEV mandates? I mean, even forgetting GHGs, just from a pollution standpoint alone, you can argue that we should be putting our pedal to the metal on this just to clean the air, even forgetting the whole GHG situation.
No, that is in there, and you're going to find that under let's see why you need now. Why we need ZEV regulations right here. There is some in there. Maybe it should be a bit stronger, and that's certainly somewhat. You could certainly emphasize that in your feedback. But we do show that the more ZEVs get on the road, the less there will be demand for oil and gas, and therefore that will have the effect of reducing the oil and gas sector emissions, which are now over a quarter of all emissions in Canada. So yeah, we do make that link, and perhaps it should be made a bit stronger. I kind of skipped over it, but it's certainly in there. And you've just reminded me. I think I'm going to strengthen that in my own little in my own submission.
So, Rolly, I looked at the Canada Gazette and what's on there, and to answer Craig's question a bit differently, if you look at the article there, it talks about some of the research they did, the proof points to say why, why they should do this, how much it's going to cost, and all that. So this is some of the stuff that Mitchell covered at the last meeting, but it goes into a fair amount of detail there. But bottom line, though, is that I don't think the numbers for pollution matter as much as the fact that we know that there's an impact, right? So you don't necessarily have to drill down into nitty-gritty details.
No,
but provide the feedback that you think is valuable. Is there any other questions?
One thing that I've done, if I can just add, Raymond, is that I've made in my own submission the link with the fact that our government, it's a political comment, but our government declared a climate emergency in 2019. And here we are in 2023, basically. So there is urgency because we're in a climate emergency or a climate crisis. So you have to use all the tools at your disposal. And the ZEV is so yeah, you can also make that case.
Yeah, so Rolly, I absolutely agree with you on that. And also to that specific point, the proposed regulations, like you said, only come into effect in 2026.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Which is many, many years after having
Yeah.
declared a climate emergency. So if it's an emergency, why in the heck are we waiting that long, right?
That's a good
Our-
point, because it'll be 7 years. If it's 2026, it'll be 7 years after 2019 when they declared the emergency.
Yeah,
Ouch.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? So we need to accelerate that.
Mhm.
If you have any other avenues to provide feedback, so I've asked for a meeting with my MP to talk about this in particular. There's a few other things I want to talk to her about, but I'm going to talk to her about this. But you guys have seen some of the numbers that we've been throwing around. So in 2026, like Rolly said, the objective is 20% market share. Well, we're already at 10% Canada-wide right now. So if you look at the projections that we've done, we should be at 20% by the end of this year, early next year, right? So that's 3 years earlier, 2 or 3 years earlier than what the government is anticipating. So, the numbers are clearly not stringent enough. I was reading today, someone was talking about, I believe it's in the state of Washington, they went to a Kia dealer. And there was something like a dozen Kia EV6s, which I've been waiting for mine for at least 8 months now, I think. So they have at least 12 on the lot.
Oh, good.
And why would they have that many on the lot? It's because they're part of the CARB states that follow the California guidelines to increase market share, right? So what the manufacturers are doing in those places is sending cars because they have an objective to meet to sell lots of these EVs. So they're sending enough so they could meet those objectives without having to be paying penalties, right? Right now in Canada, we don't have that. And even the places where we have them in BC, but particularly in Quebec, the mandate is quite weak, and it's the numbers even in Quebec are still too low. So it's not really driving things as well as it could, right? So this really speaks to availability of EVs. We all know that if there were more EVs available, there'd be a bigger market share. We all know lots of people are waiting for EVs forever. So this is an important measure that will help with that, right? But again, 2026 to me is way too far in the future. From my perspective, the game would be almost won by that time, regardless of what the government does. So we need to move much faster, right?
But I think the numbers you just quoted that we're already at 10%, I wasn't aware of that, and that will be at 20%, by 2024, basically. So by 2026, it should be higher than 20, obviously. So I think
Yes.
that's an excellent point that I'm going to also include. So I'm going to steal some of your thunder in mine.
So it doesn't hurt to repeat it.
No,
Like you said, the manufacturers are also providing some feedback. And if you're a manufacturer, even if so maybe the exception here would be Tesla where they're 100% EVs, but every other manufacturer, typically any kind of red tape, any kind of regulation is seen as a bad thing, regardless of whether they think they're going to meet it or not. It means paperwork, it means all sorts of stuff that they don't want to be bothered with, right? So it's natural for all the manufacturers to push against this because it's yet one other obstacle for them to meet their objectives, right? I wouldn't expect any manufacturer to support this. Again, except Tesla because they're already at 100%. But all the other manufacturers should be pushing against this because it's just a business constraint they don't want, right? So we need
and
to.
they are pushing against it. In fact,
Yeah.
there's a $20,000 per vehicle for failing to meet their sales mandate. And again, there's information about that. It's called a compliance. It's actually a penalty, but it's a compliance credit or something. And so you might want to look at that a bit more closely because they will agree to pay $20,000 because they still make more money on a ZEV, on an SUV than they do on a ZEV. So there's that issue as well. But again, that's in there.
Yeah. Okay. So any other questions before we go to the next presentation? No? Well, Rolly, thank you very much. You're more than welcome to stay.
Okay, I'll stay on for a bit. Yes, I have to leave at 8:30, but I've got some time.
Okay. So.
Can I mention one more thing?
Sure, sure.
Well, yeah, so we will be having, like below 2C, we will be having a webinar on March the 1st. I'm going to send you the information on it, Raymond, and you can maybe, when I say we, it's Ken Johnson and I under below 2C, Time for Action. It will have Ken Love, who's the author of this, and of course yourself, participating on March the 7th.
March the
in a
7th,
webinar.
yeah.
Yeah,
so
I
you said, yeah, you said March 1st, that was the original thing we're looking at. March 7th is when we're doing that. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll send out a notification to our members about that so that they're aware it's happening. Okay?
Okay, so which presentation are we doing here? Okay, thinking about switching. Okay, so this is for people who are just considering buying an EV but haven't actually pulled the trigger on one yet. I had a friend recently who wanted to buy an EV, and so I walked her through the whole process and stuff. And so she's like, "You should make a presentation about this because there's a lot of questions that people have that we totally forget about as EV drivers that are like it's intimidating for new people to see." So I'll do a bit of an introduction about EVCO because the idea is that we'll have this presentation as like a recurring thing at like a library or something. Sam and I are working on, this sort of concept. The idea is to have these sort of seminars pretty regularly. So it'll be intro about EVCO, terminology, because there's a lot of new words that people are going to have to learn. What other green technologies are out there? So you'll see. Stuff about batteries, because there's a lot of new questions about batteries. Living with an EV, because people are just like, it's a new way of living, right? You get to have your own gas station at your house, potentially, right? And then an opportunity for questions. So we'll get right to it. You guys are obviously all aware of who EVCO is and stuff, so I can skip this because this is basic. So terminology. Okay, so what is a watt? Watt. Kilowatts versus kilowatt hours versus watt hours per 100 kilometers, and regen braking. These are terms that people are not familiar with. So we'll cover the basics because people are familiar with like liters per 100 and all that. So I'll go into a bit about who James Watt is, because he's the one that named, well, he was the unit of energy is named after him. I didn't know this, but a watt is a joule per second, so that's pretty cool. And then, people are familiar with light bulbs. At least older people know what light bulbs are in terms of watts. So like a 100-watt light bulb, most people kind of have a sense of like, okay, yeah, that's hot and pretty bright, right? So you have sort of this innate sense of what a 100-watt light bulb is like. So I'm gonna tie that in. What's up? So 1,000 watts per kilowatt, so it's metric, right? America. So we're gonna drag the Americans into metric, whether they like it or not, through EVs.
Good luck.
So fun math. 1 kilowatt is 10 100-watt light bulbs. So there you go. It's cool. Instead of horsepower, which is a completely arbitrary and nonsensical measure of power, we're going to measure things in kilowatts because that makes sense because metric. And rather than some random horses pulling heavy rocks or whatever it was they used. Range, so kilowatts. So, the lowest power car I found in our buyer's guide was 100 kilowatts-ish. So 134 horsepower for the old money. And then the most powerful one was like a Lucid or something, and it was 820 kilowatts. So over 1,000 horsepower. And if you watch Top Gear, you know that that's cool because there was a car, the Koenigsegg or whatever, was like 1,000 horsepower. They made a big deal of it. Well, now there's an EV that's even more powerful than that. So screw that. EV battery capacity, we all know, is measured in kilowatt hours, right? So that's 1,000 watts per 1 hour, so kilowatt hour. And then fuel economy is watt hours per 100 kilometers, or you can move the decimal and make kilowatts per 100 or whatever you want, but it's metric, so it's easier. And it's all watts, right? So it all ties together, makes it a bit more logical once you understand it. Regen braking, I found this cool little GIF somebody made on the internet that I totally stole. Hopefully they don't come after us for this because it's a Nissan Leaf, turns out. But a lot of people have they have trouble with the concept that the electric motor is also a generator, right? Like it just depends on which way the energy is flowing into it. And so when you're driving, you're putting electrical energy to make it turn. And then if it's already turning, you can reverse that. So it takes the turning motion and makes it into electricity, right? It just works backwards. So I thought this graphic kind of helps because it shows you sort of how that works. Yeah, turning kinetic energy into electrical and backwards again. So make the whole point about, you know, how this saves on your friction braking, which means you don't have to replace your brakes very often. And Raymond did it at like 200 and something thousand kilometers. How much?
275.
275,000. So, you know, over 250,000 kilometers before you have to do your brakes. Pretty dope. But there's losses. And so this is also hopefully will answer the perennial question I get every single year from somebody random, who asks, why can't we have an electric motor on the back wheels and an electric generator on the front wheels and then never have to charge the car? And it's because physics, because losses exist and the universe won't let you have a perpetual motion machine because that violates everything in the known universe. Entropy, there you go. Okay, next. What about other options, right? Because we always get asked this at our events. So other options, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, hydrogen, solid-state batteries, the magic. So
It's coming next year.
it's coming 10 years from now, just 10 more years and hydrogen will be here. So hybrids, I'm going to start with hybrids because everyone kind of knows what hybrids are. They've been around for 20 years now. Yeah, 20 years, 23 even, 25 years. Oh my God. Quarter century of hybrid nonsense. They used to be like, they still have the image of like, oh, I'm eco-friendly. I'm driving a Prius. No, they're a gas car now. They're no better than a gas car. They only save fuel and stop and go traffic. If you drive any amount of highway driving, like if you live in Orleans and have to drive through the city somehow, it's not going to save you money because it's a gas car. It'll only save you if you're like stuck on the Queensway every day, going 10 kilometers an hour and stopping every 2 feet. Other than that, it's a gas car. So but they're more expensive than a gas car normally. So you're paying more to get a car that does basically the same job for, you know, like you'll save a few bucks a month, like literally like the cup of coffee amount of money per month kind of thing. So it's never going to pay itself off. So it's not worth it. Unless you have very specific driving habits, which most people don't, because most people use highways. So hybrids are no plug-in hybrids. You'll recognize my old battle axe, my war horse, the Pacifica, which was painted Raymond, so not in primer color. It was dingy teal, as they called it. They're better, right? They have a gas engine, so you have all that baggage that comes with that, all the drama of a gas engine, the oil changes and filters, belts, and all of the nonsense. But you can drive it on electricity for long periods of time, so not terrible. You can refill it at home with the electricity, which is cool. So you have some of the EV perks. And the cool thing about plug-in hybrids is they're kind of like a gateway drug to EVs because people will buy them because they feel like, okay, it's a hybrid. I'm used to this idea. And then you sort of and then you get lulled into the EV bliss of the smooth acceleration and the silence and the, you know, like just how nice an EV is to drive. And then every once in a while that gas engine will kick in and you're like, what is that? Oh, right. There's a stupid engine up there. I need to get rid of that in my next car. So these are a gateway drug. Yes, Raymond.
Yeah, so a few comments here. So for people who are looking to drive electric and looking to
It's a
be,
good option for a lot of situations.
it's a good option. Now,
Yeah.
the problem with a lot of PHEVs, and there have been studies that show that
Oh, slide.
most PHEVs never get plugged.
Yeah, so it only works if you plug it in. If you don't plug it in, then it's no point.
Yeah, and in Europe, a lot of the PHEVs were sold
Yeah, but we're
as
talking about-
compliance cars, right? Yeah, but it's just.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so it's a British technology. They're good for like, if you want a Jeep right now that's electric, the only option is a plug-in Jeep, so plug-in hybrid, so. Or a minivan, like the Pacifica, still a good car. Unless you're my brother and then it's lemon. But it's a Chrysler, so you never know. So roll the dice, buy a Chrysler. What about hydrogen, right? So I like this image because it sort of breaks it down in very simple terms why hydrogen's dumb. Because everyone, like the oil industry loves hydrogen because you can see the oil industry gets to use a lot of its stuff. This is the clean hydrogen too, right? This is they take water and they make hydrogen with solar electricity and then they store it and then they move it around and they pump it at a Shell station and then it gets, you know, like it's like they keep their business model more or less, except in reality, 95% of the hydrogen that's ever made, it comes from methane, which is fossils. So it actually creates 2 CO2s for every H2 you get, which is terrible. You're literally better off just burning the methane than to making hydrogen out of it. So if you're doing this for climate reasons, which I think a lot of people do, math doesn't, like physics doesn't help that. Whereas on the other side, you've got, clean electricity and then goes into the car. And that actually works too, because it's DC, right? The sun makes, like solar panels are DC current, then it goes into the car and it's DC. So yeah, so it's very simple. You can put those on your roof. Good luck trying to get a hydrogen hydrolysis machine at your house and not exploding. And then like there's all that like infrastructure, like you got to move in. It's like the thing that leaks all the time because it's literally the smallest atom. So it'll leak like crazy, and it makes metal brittle, and it's super cold because you have to compress it and store it. And then like in the winter, you're like the nozzle gets frozen to your car, and then you have to wait till May to get like your car out of the Shell station. Future technology. So solid state batteries are on the horizon, but they've been on the horizon for a while. It's not the kind of thing that you're going to want to hold your breath for. Might take a few years, might take decades. They don't get cold yet, so that's a problem that has to crack. Some companies say they make them work in the cold, but so far nothing's been produced. There's other battery chemistries that are also on the horizon. So LFP, that's lithium iron phosphate, and sodium batteries, those have potential, but they are more for cost reduction purposes than something you want to wait for. So if there's a car on the market right now that you want, just go for it, because there's nothing going to come along that's going to be like, oh my God, my car's obsolete and I only bought it last year. It's more like these other chemistries are just to make the cars cheaper. So if you're looking for that like $10,000 hatchback, you're gonna have to wait because they don't exist, and that's probably the technology that'll make it happen. But if there's a car on the market now that suits your needs and your budget, then it's not going to be obsolete when these new things come out, because they're a little worse in different ways. Yeah, fear of missing out. So don't have any fear of missing out. FOMO. Millennial thing.
I didn't have that in my.
Like YOLO. You only live once. Yeah, my history is in color, his is in black and white. All right, all about EV batteries. So these are things that we all, I'm sure, know. Raw materials are mined. That's what a lithium mine actually looks like, unlike what the naysayers will have you try and have you believe. So it's kind of pretty, but it's not great. It still uses a lot of water. So mining's not great, but you only have to mine it for the batteries once. Whereas people like to forget that oil is also mined, and it has to be mined constantly because you keep burning it. Whereas this stuff is mined once, put into a battery. Battery lives in the car 15, 20 years, whenever the car rusts around the battery usually. And then the battery's still good, so you put it into a shipping container on a rack, and you attach it to a building or a solar farm or a wind farm or whatever, and it'll do that job for another 20-ish years. I mean, we don't really know because it's still in the early days, but probably another 20 years or so. And then we do know this part: it gets recycled, and the yields right now are 95% because the only bits they can't recycle are the plastic bits inside the packs, but everything else, all the metals get recycled because they're actually valuable, and it's easier to recycle it than to mine it. And it's cheaper too. So they're already cost competitive with newly mined materials just from recycling. It just the recyclers don't have a lot of feedstock right now because all the batteries that have mostly been made for EVs are still in the EVs they were made for. So they're living on the yields that are not great, right? So whenever you make any product, there's a certain percentage that is defective, so you throw it away. So in this case, whenever they make batteries for EVs, there's a certain percentage, small percentage, that is defective for whatever reason, and so they get recycled, and that's where these battery recyclers exist for now, turning them into new batteries. So battery life is good. This is what a battery pack looks like. So this is like the fuel tank of the car you can think of. It's usually in the floor of the vehicle, and I'll show you that in the next slide. But basically, the battery is made into modules. So they have individual cells, which are the little things on the left there, and there's different shapes depending on who's doing what and how they designed it. But basically, those little cells are put into modules, and then those modules are added together to make however big a battery you need. And then they sandwich it between some pretty tough metals. which are ballistic proof, so you can drive over rocks and hopefully not puncture it. And there's like thermal management unless it's a leaf. And there's like a bunch of stuff that goes in there, and electronic stuff and battery managers. And so everything to keep it happy in that one thing. And then that thing gets put between some wheels. So the big battery pack is in the floor there. And you've got the wheels, and this is your basic architecture for a clean sheet electric car. So a purpose-built EV will have a skateboard platform more or less like this. This one's a Skoda, but it's a Volkswagen, so it's all the Volkswagens will look like this. And yeah, so you can have electric motors. They're about the size of a watermelon, so you can put them at the front, you can put them at the back, put them in both. Have all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive, whatever you want. Very flexible. Put them on the axle. They're direct drive. You don't need transmissions. You don't need all the gubbins. You can make whatever body shape you want and plop it down on this platform. And so you make any vehicle type you like, basically. And so this is how EVs are built. All right, so talked about stationary storage as a second life. This is what that looks like. So this image is from an Eaton facility in Spain that is attached to a wind farm, I believe, if I remember correctly. But basically, they put them on big racks with some electric stuff to connect them and some cooling and whatever. And that's what your car pack looks like. So if you look back to this slide, you'll see the pack sort of looks like that gray thing right there in the middle. And so that just slides right on the rack, and that's what that is. So it'll do that job for a decade or two or maybe more before they actually have to recycle them. And there you go. Providing backup power, and then battery recycling is already cost effective, as I mentioned. The reason the batteries go bad isn't because they like catch fire or whatever. It's because what happens is a car needs a lot of current all at once to like accelerate and stuff. And over time, the chemistry just slows down and doesn't let you do that. It doesn't give you the big dump of power when you want it. And so the internal resistance to the battery gets too much. And so that's why the batteries sort of degrade after years and years and years in a car, but they're still good, right? So if you use them gently, like in a building where you're drawing a little bit of current from a lot of batteries, then they can last for years and years because they're being used gently. It's just a car is a bit of a hard application for the battery. Just it's rough on them because you're draining it really fast and then charging it up really fast. And so they do wear out over time, but the life of a vehicle is 15, 20 years anyway. So they've engineered these things to last that long. All right, so eventually, yeah, as more EVs go into recycling in 20 years, this will become a bigger source of raw materials. Okay, so living with an EV, how to charge, where to charge, all that good stuff. You'll recognize my sick wheels. Yeah.
Only needs paint.
Nope, that's fine. It's all good. At least it has an interior. All right, so there's 3 levels of charging, right, as we all know. So level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is your 110 outlet plug, 120 volt, whatever. Level 2 is what you see in the background there. That's 240 volts. And then level 3 is the fast charge. We all know this, but whatever, I'll skip through. So level 1 and 2 plugs are J1772 in North America, type 1. Tesla is weird and has its own, but they have an adapter that comes with the car because that's the law. So every EV in North America sold has this connector, even the Teslas, and they handle all the AC charging needs. And then Tesla has its own thing too. And then level 3 is what this looks like. You can see my SICK right there as well. And this is what we call DCFC. In Tesla land, it's called supercharging. Mostly you do this on a road trip for most people. So you do most of your charging at home, and then when you're on a road trip, you hit up one of these bad boys, and they can charge most EVs in around a half an hour or so. Some cars are faster, some cars are a bit slower, but in general, you're looking at about a half-hour lunch break kind of thing. And you do this, every few hours of driving, you'd stop, charge up, and have lunch, and go to the bathroom and whatever. And they're kind of expensive, right? They're more expensive than charging at home. That's why you wouldn't use these as like your daily thing unless you need to, and then you pay for it. So this is what the non-Tesla charging network looks like. And these are only fast chargers in our area, as you can see. So the clump down in Toronto, clump up in Montreal, and then there's a little cluster around Ottawa, very cute. And then conveniently, I put the title over the abyss between Petawawa and North Bay because that hasn't been filled in yet, but they'll get there eventually. So if you have a long range EV like mine, you're good. You just got to stop and Petawawa charger up first, and then you can make the leap. But if you have a Leaf or a Soul, you might not be able to do it. So keep that in mind. But that'll get filled in. And then this is what the Tesla, oh, we're not at the Tesla network yet. So this is what the Tesla one looks like. So that's the Tesla connector. It's very elegant, very small, very sleek. Does AC and DC, which is very cool. But it's proprietary. And despite what Tesla wants to do, calling it the North American standard, it's really not, there's only like 4 cars that use it. And they're all Teslas, of course. So yeah, non-Tesla cars can't use that charger or that plug. And Tesla owners cannot natively DC fast charge at a DC fast charge station that isn't a Tesla supercharger. There are adapters you can buy, but it's not supported by the car out of the box. But anyway, so that's what Tesla looks like.
And so later on,
Later on.
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the news in a bit. This is what the Tesla supercharger network looks like. It is more thin, but that's because it's the proprietary thing. And so they have good coverage, the same basic coverage. It's just they don't need as many dots because there aren't as many networks because it's only one network versus like a dozen. And so that's the Tesla charging map. And you can see you can get basically anywhere you want. They also have the gap between Petawawa and North Bay. So really, someone's got to put something up in Mattawa there. Just a little.
There are some, but they never.
They're garbage. They don't work, so they're filtered out because they're garbage. But yeah, so that's Tesla. And then we've got the buyer's guide for all the EVs that everyone here, I'm sure, knows about. So that's cool. All right. So the next month, we can do the other presentation I did once you have your EV. But the news for February. Okay, so VW is apparently, according to Handelsblatt, which is a German newspaper, they're apparently going to, they've decided to build a smaller SUV than the ID4 in North America. It's unannounced as of yet. They're also considering Ontario to site a battery cell plant. So that's pretty cool. So watch this space. More VWs coming. Next. Go gadget slide. There we go. But keeping with the VW train, they've announced that their engineers have developed. Okay, so I just included this because pulse inverters sounds really Star Trek and awesome. But they've invented a new pulse inverter for EVs, which is apparently 20% more efficient. And that's the thing that makes the current from DC from the battery into AC for the motors. I guess using pulses.
So one of the problems with the Audis was they weren't super efficient.
Right.
So this would.
So this is designed in-house. So what's happened basically is VW, to get the MEB platform out, they just bought stuff off the shelf, like from other suppliers, but it's 20% more efficient. So this should enable less expensive, smaller EVs, because the more efficient the EV is, the smaller the battery needs to be to do the same job, basically, and cheaper, which could open up lower priced vehicles, which is what we want. So apparently this is going to be deployed in the MEB Plus platform, which is coming at some point, but it's unclear when exactly. So watch this space as well. Also pulse inverters, new term, cool.
Turbo encabulator.
The turbo encabulator, yes.
What's the capacity?
Yes. All right, Flow introduced a new high-power DCFC charger. So starting next year, because it's already 2023, they will start installing these bad boys in North America. They're called the Flow Ultra chargers, and they are pretty cool. So when they're both used together, so they come as a pair. So there's like 2 plugs for every one of these units. If they're used together, like simultaneously, they go up to 320 kilowatts per plug. But if you're lucky and you have an Ioniq 5 that can maybe take advantage of this, I don't know, and you roll up and you're the only one at the station, then you can get up to 500 kilowatts, which is freaking cool. So hopefully my car could take that, but it probably won't. But yeah, so the future, that's what it looks like. It's pretty neat. And it's a self-contained unit, so they just like plunk these things down. Yeah, and they got cool lights, and you know, they tell you when you're in use and not. So very neat. Good for Flow. Flow has an issue with their network right now where there's so many 50 kilowatt chargers, and those are very slow by today's standards. And they have precious few 100 kilowatts, so it's nice to see them having much faster on the horizon. So that'll be nice. Hyundai confirms the range figures for the Ioniq 6 for Canada. They haven't confirmed pricing yet, but it's expected to be close to the Ioniq 5, maybe a little bit more, but like not a huge amount, like a couple grand more kind of thing. Delivery starts soon, like in the next few weeks, for those lucky few that got on the pre-order list. So the base model has the longest range. It's the rear-wheel drive long-range version, 581 kilometers. And from my experience with Hyundai vehicles, that you can take to the bank, and in the summer you'll probably get 600 kilometers out of it. So
700.
or even 700 if you're a granny that drives it. Old man speeds. But anyway, 581 kilometers. These are legit numbers that you can actually get with these cars. So that's pretty cool. The mid trim is 509, and then the ultimate, you can probably get 509 because the eco mode does some magic stuff. But they test this in standard mode, so it's a lower number. But if you have an ultimate on order, then you'll probably get the same numbers as the other ones. If you drive in eco mode.
Well,
Without iPedal.
preferred all-wheel drive is already ordered. The only
Yeah.
difference between the second and third one is that the third one has bigger rims that are less engine.
Yeah, so if you put on like your smaller rims and then drive in eco mode, you'll get the.
Smaller rims, you're gonna get
super
the
long
same
one, yeah.
Which is the second one, and if you.
It's a little
go
heavier.
You're gonna get the rear-wheel drive range too.
Yeah.
So in any of those cars.
You can do 581 if you do
Well,
it.
19-inch rims, if
Yeah.
you drive in eco mode, you're gonna get 581.
Yeah, so it's pretty badass because my car only does 500 on a good day. But yeah,
So that, I wonder what the calculation would turn out to be if you put smaller wheels for the winter.
I did that.
You might get
But there's
as
a-
much range as.
Well, because the winter treads are worse than the winter.
No, it is, but I mean,
Oh, like
the
winter
smaller
rims in
wheels
summer.
give you more range, right?
I don't know.
If you have bigger rims in the summer, maybe.
Well,
you
it
get.
won't completely counteract winter range loss, but it'll soften it.
I have smaller, whatever. It's a slippery car.
Do you know if the Canadian model has the side view mirrors that are electronic? Or
That's not allowed in. Yeah, that's verboten, but also like it's extra complexity and like a mirror is simple. The camera is
The solid state
Cameras
camera.
is bolsters, I'm sorry.
I mean, for the record, like,
Camera's simpler.
I think even with the 20-inch wheels or whatever, I think the EPA like is BS for the top trim.
So these are-
It's gonna be.
These are NRCan numbers, these aren't EPA,
Yeah,
this is NRCan.
I mean,
So anyway,
that's crazy range loss for bigger rims. Like if you look on comparable vehicles, like.
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Rolls 3
go
Performance,
back.
You don't see such a performance, range.
Spoilers.
Have big rims as well.
okay, so this should have
Doesn't
been.
make sense.
This should have been up with the VW stuff, but, so Scout, you guys all know Scout is coming back, because I've talked about it a couple times. They were supposed to be made by Foxconn, most recently is what we heard. Magna was rumored. But apparently Volkswagen's now like, they're just gonna build their own plant. They want to make domestic Audis in the US so that they can take advantage of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so they're gonna throw in Scouts apparently in that facility too. Make them together, because there's rumors of like an off-road Audi coming, which could be borrowing some Scout stuff, so who knows? So watch this space, but yeah, looks like things are progressing. Scion is no more, sadly, if you were in Europe. Hoping to have a Scion delivered, if you were one of the 45,000 people that ordered it. This wasn't coming to North America. But it was a cool car. It was like a solar EV, right? Covered in solar panels, like the doors and the roof and the back end and everything was solar. Which I think meant that it only came in black. But unfortunately, the company is having financial issues. They've been having financial issues because it was a crowdfunding thing to start with. And so they're gonna focus on stuff that actually makes them money, which is solar panel things. They're giving up on the car. So there's now, with Lightyear having declared bankruptcy already, which was the other solar EV car thing. The only solar car now on the market is the Aptera. So hopefully they make it, and then we can have at least one car that's powered by the solar energy, because that'd be cool. But it's a 3-wheel thing, so it's not even really a car, is it?
It's like a motorcycle, basically.
I think it qualifies as a motorcycle. I'm not sure. It's unclear, but we'll see what happens when Aptera starts delivering. All right. So there was a new video that was posted on Instagram which to me looked kind of fake, but people are reporting it as real, so who knows? It's about the EV9, which is a 3-row ginormous SUV. It was on Instagram, sorry, did I say something else? TikTok? No, Instagram, okay, whatever. It was on a road without camouflage. It looks suspiciously like this picture, which was blue and everything, so I don't know if it was CGI or not. But yeah, so they're gonna announce this later this year anyway, so it's not really a big deal, but watch the space. EV9 is coming, so if you're in the market for a relatively affordable 3-row SUV, because there aren't really any of those on the market right now, this will be one to keep an eye out for. It'll drop in 2024, well, 2024 model year, so probably dropping later this year if you're optimistic, probably next year for real. All right, Stellantis released images of the Ram 1500 Rev, I guess, is what they're going with. Pretty cool truck, looks good. Has
Concept that you put out 2 weeks before.
yeah, that was weird. Yeah, they put out a concept 2 weeks earlier, and then they dropped what the actual one looks like, and it looks a little different. People are upset, but whatever. It has a ginormous frunk, which is like the F-150. Production is starting in 2024, so next year. But if you want one, you can reserve a spot for $100, which I think might actually be sold out already, but go check it out on their website. It's called Rev Insider Plus. And yeah, so new pickup truck adding to the list.
Is it on a frame?
It is on the Stella large frame. No, sorry, the Stella frame platform, just to be confusing. So it's a body on frame, basically, is what that means. It's body on frame.
That little stuff.
Yeah, so it's a body on frame.
Unibody trucks.
Yeah, and if you want the specs, they haven't released the official specs for the truck, but the Stella frame specs have been released. So you can Google Stella frame and you'll see how big the battery packs are. Like there's a range they give and then the horsepower and all that. But it can do like all-wheel drive, all that good stuff. As far as like how far the truck will be able to go, who knows? That's all aerodynamics. So you get a basic idea of what the truck should be able to do based on what they've already talked about. So yeah, cool pickup. Pricing has been announced. Lordstown halted production of their electric pickup truck. So they've recalled 13 or 19 of the 31 that they've delivered so far. All 31 of them, yeah. And this is after years and years of delays. Lordstown has had a bit of a tortured history, and now apparently Workhorse, which is the company that sort of spun them off, is trying to take back the patents that they let them use or something. So there's some issues there. So if you're waiting for a Lordstown, you might have to just wait longer. Yeah, so it's working on a supplier issue right now, because there's some quality problems with half the trucks they've delivered so far.
That one has one light on.
It's true. I didn't even notice that, but yeah, it's true. Like only one headlight's working in the image. So sure, let's go with that.
Yeah.
All right. Some other good news. Toyota has a new CEO coming on April 1st. And he is replacing the old CEO who had a real hate on for EVs for some reason. And so the new CEO, Koji Sato, said the time is right for the company to start, pivoting. And Nikkei Business is reporting that they're looking at building EVs in the US by 2025. So only 2 short years. They want to make 10,000 EVs per month by 2026. So they got to, light a fire under themselves to do that. But that's the BZ4X, and they figured out how to keep the wheels from falling off that bad boy. So things might be looking up for Toyota. They might survive the decade if they keep it up.
Have they figured out the range issue?
No, but they'll work on it. We'll get there. Have confidence.
The carpets are still in use.
All right. Next, there we go. Cool. Tesla's building a 1 gigawatt-hour megapack in southern Ontario. So this is just south of Hamilton on the Oneida Energy Storage Project. Whoop, I don't know what happened there, but okay. It's a gigawatt-hour facility made up of megapacks, which are each 3.9 megawatt hours per shipping container, basically. And they all have integrated inverters and thermal management. So it's basically a Tesla Powerwall on super steroids, like gone Hulk sized. And they're sold out for the next 2 years still. So Tesla is, but anyway, this project is going to be used to store surplus power on the Ontario grid and will double Ontario's storage capacity overnight, basically, when it comes online. So that's pretty cool. And you can see the wind farm in the background there. Yeah.
Is it owned by Tesla?
Nope, it's owned
Station.
the Six Nations and NR Store.
Yeah, so the Six Nations of the Grand River Development Corp.
Yeah, and NR Store. Yeah. All right, so the first supercharger with the Magic Dock has been spotted in the US, and that's a picture of it. That's what it looks like. So this is kind of cool because the rumors have been flying lately that Tesla is going to open up its charging network to non-Teslas, to the unwashed masses, if you will, with their Ioniqs and other peasant vehicles. And we unwashed masses use CCS in our cars. And so Tesla, to do this, because they want government money, basically in the US, if they want federal funds, they have to have a universal standard charger. And so Tesla tried that with the charging connector, but it's not going to fly. So they're going to support CCS at the superchargers. And they've come up with this really clever idea called the Magic Dock. And basically, if you're a Tesla owner and you roll up, you just use it as normal. Like it'll give you the Tesla plug. But if you're a non-Tesla owner and you have to like use the app to unlock the charger, it'll unlock the whole CCS thing. So the Tesla connector stays connected to that bit, and then the whole CCS plug comes out. And then that's what you plug into the car. So it's a pretty cool, seamless thing, and it seems simple enough to like actually work probably. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's being tested right now, it looks like. So hopefully they start deploying these things more. And so, yeah.
Sorry, so this is interesting they're doing this because in Europe,
In Europe, they have two cables,
yeah, they use a different approach.
which is probably more expensive, and that's why they're doing this.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so that's a lot of copper to have two distinct plugs, and it's a lot of complexity, whereas this is just a connector on the end. So that's kind of cool. And it's cool that the app will know, like, okay, you're a non-Tesla, so you have to get the CCS plug. And so when you pull it, when it unlocks, it'll like pull down the whole thing.
So I know my fellow Tesla drivers, they'll need to really learn to put that cable back. Not everybody does.
Yeah.
And it ends up packed with snow.
There you go. So that'll be fun. But that's cool. Also new possibly Tesla prototype. So Tesla's been talking forever about a $25,000 EV. People are calling it the Model 2. Musk keeps saying it's not happening, but then Musk also, when they built Giga Shanghai, they set up a design studio at Giga Shanghai specifically to make an affordable EV in China for global sale. So this might be that, or it could just be a copycat Chinese company testing a car that looks very similar to Tesla, but isn't actually a Tesla. Because they do have a few of those too. So we're not sure, but hopefully on Investor Day in what, 1 day, a couple days, 2 days, maybe they'll announce a new cheaper Tesla for global sale built in China, which would be really amazing. So who knows? It's a hatchback, looks like a hatchback Model 3.
That's a crossover.
Well, it's whatever. It's like people are calling it the Mazda.
Whatever it is, if it's a less expensive model.
Yeah,
It's gonna sell like hotcakes.
Yeah.
And it's gonna help the cost, right?
yeah. So watch this space. It looks good.
It looks like a Tesla crossed with the Hyundai Kona.
People are saying it looks like the Mazda
Yes, looks like Mazda
CX-30
CX-2.
or the crappy Mazda one.
Looks like the Mazda CX-2 they gas one. Not the,
Whatever. It has 4 full doors, unlike the Mazda EV. No suicide doors. Whatever.
I like suicide doors are cool.
All right, and that's it. That's it for me.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the OEB is Ontario Energy Board. And what they've announced over the last couple of years, they've been working on this ultra low overnight rate. It should be rate, not price. And essentially what they're doing is they're going to require distributors to offer the new ultra low overnight price to RPP customers or rate plan. So all of you guys are RPP customers, and they have to offer it. So Hydro Ottawa, as an example, has to offer it no later than November 1st, 2023. They can though offer it earlier on May 1st, 2023. My guess, it'll probably be November in Ottawa. We'll see. Anyways, I'll try not to worry too much with the details, but if you look at the price plans on the left, right-hand side, the top one is the ultra low overnight price plan. And if you look at the weekend part, so this applies all year. It's not like the other price plans that have different schemes between winter and summer. Okay, so I find that's a bit of an issue. I don't know why they would do that, but anyways, they've gone through consultation and this is what they came up with. So for weekends and statutory holidays, they have a relatively low price all the time. For the weekday, the on-peak time is from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Okay, so that's the afternoon peak. So the idea here is to discourage people from charging during the afternoon peak. Okay. Mid peak is between 9 and 11. So if you want to have the really cheap electricity, you have to do things after 11. So being the Scrooge that I am, I would want to start everything after 11 p.m. To be able to save a bit on electricity. But anyways, what else to say here? So there's not much else to say there except, well, so the time of use price plan is the one that I'm on right now. I'll show you examples of calculations on, I think it's the next slide or the slide after, where I use my actual bills to show you what I think I would pay under the all three plans. So anyways, time of use price plans, they change between summer and winter, and you can see there that the peak and mid-peak swap between summer and winter, okay? Reason for that is in the summer, the peak is during the middle of the day when it's hot and air conditioning is at its maximum. That's also, by the way, when solar produces the most, right? So that's a good match between production and demand. In winter, the peaks are in the morning and in the afternoon. So 5 to 7 is when you would pay for the peak in the afternoon, in the evening, and 7 to 11 in the morning. So so that's a plan I'm on right now. The other plan is a tiered price plan, which that one you pay a certain rate for the first X number of kilowatt hours. So 600 in the summer, 1,000 in the winter. So the winter one recognizes that there's there's less daylight, so you need more lighting, and there's heating and all that that requires more electricity, right? So it reflects that you pay a smaller price for the first chunk, and then you pay more for the extra, right? So if you look here on the chart at the bottom there, the table, that's the pricing for the ultra low overnight price. So if you look at the on-peak price, it's 10 times the ultra low overnight price. Okay, so the ultra low overnight price is supposed to be somewhere around 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay, which means that the peak rate would be 25 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay, that's a hell of an incentive to get people to charge overnight and to avoid peak usage, right? So let's go to so this is what it looks like. So the tiered 8.7 cents for the first 100 kilowatt hours per month in the winter, and in the summer it's 600, and then you pay 10.3 afterwards. With time of use, like I have right now in the winter, which is what we are in right now, off peak is 7.54 cents. So when I charge my car at night, that's what I pay. Right? There's also a delivery charge and all that, which I didn't include here. Okay. There's then after that, mid peak is from 11 in the morning to 5 p.m. It's 10.5, and peak, like I said earlier, is in the morning and early evening. Okay, so the rates that I have here for the ultra low overnight rate, they're based on some assumptions. So the mid peak and the weekend off peak, those are going to match the time of use rates, but the on peak and ultra low overnight rates, these are what I figured they might be based on what I've heard. In other words, that the overnight rate would be 2.5 cents, and then the other rate would be 10 times higher, right? Okay, so that's what I use for my calculations on the next page. Now, that number may be a bit higher, but what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to figure out what the rate is that will be essentially, I believe, revenue neutral overall. So anyways, we'll see what that turns out to be. Okay, so the cost for Ottawa on the winter side, this is the month of January for me. So the bill actually had finished halfway through January. My total cost was $271, okay, plus delivery charge and all that, okay? So I now have a heat pump, right? So a big difference there, right, in terms of cost. Sorry?
I might want to switch to tiny use.
No, I have,
I'm on tiered.
you're on tiered.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to probably switch, the summer's even better. But so if you look at tiered, it would have cost me $330 plus the other chargers extra for that month's worth of electricity, okay? Because I'm careful about trying to charge overnight and trying to do things like
Dishwasher.
laundry a bit less, mostly dishwasher, it's always at night. It
My
always runs at
my
night.
light is turn on all the lights all the time.
I go behind other people, which I will remain nameless, and I turn off the lights, so.
That's funny because I do that for you.
Oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. Anyways. So this is my actual bill, okay, that's the split. So what I did is I tried to figure out what that split would look like under the ultra low rate, okay? It's hard to figure out because the times don't match, right? But according to what I have here, it would save me actually in winter, this is about what, $15 plus a bit more on delivery charges and all that. So a total of around $20 I can save a month with the ultra low rate with my current patterns, okay? In the summer, it gets better because in the summer I use a lot less electricity because I'm not heating, right? So this is from July of last year. And spare you some of the details, but bottom line is I use about half the electricity. And so I'm on the time of use, right, the top one. So the cost was $155. With the ultra low, I'm figuring it would be 87. I'd save about 50%, not quite 50%, but I'd save a whole whack of money there, okay? So, but these are my assumptions as to what the distribution would look like. It will depend on a bunch of different factors, right? But right now I'm working on trying to figure out how to get my water heater to heat the water at night and use the water during the day and stuff like that. And working with people on that to try to figure out how we can optimize that. But bottom line is it's costing me less than it would on tiered. And so it's costing me less than it would on tiered, if I was on tiered, both in the summer and the winter. And this is what I had calculated a little while ago when I was calculating how much I thought my electricity rates would be, or electricity bill would be based on charging overnight and all that. So good to know that my calculations were correct and I am saving a bit of money. Okay, so that's what it looks like. So again, this will be implemented as early as May and as late as November here in Ottawa. And these rates that I'm assuming here are what are my assumptions, right? So I don't know if that's going to be quite the rates that we're going to see in reality. Okay. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I just had a comment. I have a timer that I installed on my hot water tank. At 7 p.m. it clicks on, and then at 7 a.m. or 6:59 a.m. it clicks off. And we have enough hot water through the day to get us through the two of us doing everything during the day. We don't notice it, showers, whatever. If we have four of us, then I have to turn it on during the day just because of the showers.
Yeah, so I've got a heat pump water heater where I could set it so it will if it needs to turn on during the day. But I could set it up to mostly heat at night, right? So yeah. So anyways, so that it's certainly a way to save a bit of cost, a bit of energy, right? And the other benefit too is given that you're using energy that's produced at night, it's typically cleaner energy, right? So, so you're using cleaner power to power your stuff. Any other comments, questions?
Alistair here. So my house is fully electric, and right now, because I have solar, I have zero incentive to not turn everything on during the day and use as much power as I want whenever I want. Is there
Okay,
any
so-
plans for ultra
Yes.
low and solar?
Yes, so actually I did not put that in there, but as part of the same exercise, they will be permitting people who have solar to go onto a time of day price and ultra low. I'm not sure the exact details of that, how that's gonna work, but it won't be straight net metering at the flat rate project that you have, the tiered rate that you have right now, okay?
So my
So-
father, who also has solar, is very interested in this, and he literally, I just was reading an email. If you want to hear Ontario government or Hydro One, now he's a Hydro One because he's in the CARP area, so he's not City of Ottawa, but we are aware of the bulletin that was released by the Ontario Energy Board. This is Hydro One email on January 17th that sets out that the OEB's staff view that electricity distribution shall offer net metered customers their choice of either tiered pricing plans or time of use. Hydro One is currently reviewing the bulletin and will provide an update on our position over the next few weeks. So otherwise, they are aware of it, but they haven't really, they haven't come up with how they're gonna deal with it yet. But yes,
Yeah, so it's not necessarily easy to do, and there's some software changes required to do that.
yeah,
So I can understand they wanna take their time and do it properly.
exactly.
But it's good news that, because, you know, the one thing that was unfortunate with people who had solar and in some cases batteries, the most efficient way or the best way environmentally speaking for you to operate that would be to have your solar fed into the grid. Because when we get lots of solar production, that's when we have lots of demand, when there's high air conditioning demand. And that's when our gas plants work the hardest. So it's better environmentally if we could get all that energy to go to the grid, and then you get it back at a lower rate overnight when there's surplus electricity, right? So this is a positive change.
Mhm.
And very happy to see that. So we're moving in the right direction, so. Okay, any other questions, comments?
Is this an opt-in
Just on that
program or is it-
topic,
Yes, it'll be an opt-in. You will have
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
you will have to request to change to these rate plans.
Was there someone online who said something?
yeah, I was gonna chime in with some details on it as well, from an Hydro Ottawa perspective. The way Hydro Ottawa is gonna do it is that they're going to enable people who have solar to use their solar in the middle of the day. They'll receive whatever the hourly rate is for that solar, and that'll be counted towards your generation credits. And then you can use those generation credits whenever you'd like throughout the rest of the year in your 12 months that your credits are allowed to be used. So like you're generating solar energy during peak hours, which are going to be 25 cents per se. And you can use that to offset your electricity consumption in winter whenever you want to use those credits to offset. So it's a bank of credits that are going to be associated with the dollars that you create, not the actual, say, kilowatt hours that you generate.
Yeah, but actually it's probably a better deal, yeah, like Nicola is saying, it's probably a better deal for people who have solar, right?
Oh, it's a
So-
massively better deal now with this, with the ultra
Yeah.
low overnight, than with
Yeah.
you were doing it on tiered, which is what you were forced into the last time. And
Yeah.
basically, the OEB has said you can't, like utilities can't not allow net meter customers to participate in the ultra low overnight rate.
Yeah, which is cool. Actually, one thing I found out through this, reading on this, is some utilities actually allowed people who had solar to not, they didn't force them to be on net metering. They gave them a choice, right? So it's nice to see that.
There were utilities that were allowing customers to participate in time of use, but
Yeah.
Hydro Ottawa and Hydro One were not one of them.
Correct, yeah. So this is positive. Cool. So let's move on. We're really behind in terms of our schedule, but we should be able to catch up. So EVX update, not much else to say. We'll talk about events that are going to happen in the short term. We are booking events. Was exchanging email with our center today to do that. Right now, we don't have the funding quite secured for next year, which starts April 1st. So still waiting on that, but so, and it does limit the commitments we can make at this point in time. That being said, we expect this to be resolved within the next couple of weeks, and we'll go on from there, right? But things are moving. We do have a lot of stuff on our schedule, but before we talk about the future, we'll talk about the past. So we've been doing the kilowatts on coffee every Saturday, essentially. Sometimes it wasn't quite the Moulin de Provence, like I found out one weekend. I went to the wrong place on the 18th.
Only because of last minute changes because
Yeah.
of protesters.
Yeah, because the
Clown boy.
the clowns downtown, we were concerned that they would interfere with the this event. But anyways, last weekend we had lots of people. We had something like how many winter cars? I don't know how many we had, but one of those
duplicates.
yeah, and Nicola pointed out that there wasn't a single duplicate in the models we had there. We had a really good mix of models. Yeah, we had a whole bunch, yeah, so it was great. So more past events, you remember that, yes, it was in February that we went to OC Transpo. It seems like a long time ago already. That was a great event, really appreciated it. Was really funny to see that sign too, when everybody did the squirrel thing and looked at the EVX sign outside. So February 9th, we had a joint meeting with Houston EVA. Vancouver EVA didn't show actually, but Mike and I were there. And Mike presented on what we were doing in Ottawa, and the Houston people were quite interested in some of the stuff we're doing. So we're likely to exchange in the future and work.
They may present at our meeting next month.
Yes, so we're trying to get them to present what they're doing at their meeting next month, and
Our
you'll
meeting.
yeah, sorry, our meeting next month. So you'll see that there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in Texas, and I won't steal the thunder. I did add a picture here that was an official event, but Nicola and I went to try a Taiga fully electric snowmobile.
Yeah,
Great. Ryan did separately, yeah. But this is Nicola and I with our guide, and it was a lot of fun. It works really well.
Those things are fast and
They're
quiet.
very fast and it's quiet, yeah. And under the stink of the two cycle engine there that
I don't know if anybody knew that a snowmobile can do a burnout at 40, but I found that out on that day. Nice.
so they're very nice. They're very nice. Now Taiga is not the only one getting into this business. So BRP, they're coming out with an electric snowmobile in the fall. We're starting to build them in the fall for delivery early next year. They're less range than these ones, but the bottom line is BRP is actually committed to electrify their full line of products, which is very cool. So other past events, so we had an EVX event at downtown. It didn't quite meet the expectations we had in terms of number of people and all that, but we still went through and talked to answer some questions of people who had some good questions to ask. And then we did a lunch version of that on the 22nd. And actually one of the things we found out, lesson learned, is that Mitchell was on there and he posed, or I think he posed the first question, which prompted everybody else to start asking questions. So that was great. We've got really good questions and had a good discussion with the participants. Not a huge audience again, but anyways, these are things we're trying. If they don't work, we'll try something else. But anyways, I think that concludes what we did this month. So upcoming events. There you go. So we have our monthly meeting again here on March 27th. In terms of other upcoming events, so March 11th, we'll be participating in St. Patrick's Parade, okay? We intend to bring the trailer and vehicle. We should talk after.
Okay.
But we could take my vehicle or take another one and maybe show others. Anyways, we'll talk about it after, but if someone wants to join us, we'll be looking for a few people to help us. We need someone on either side of the trailer to make sure that nobody gets in the way of the wheels of the trailer, okay? So we may be distributing some candy or something. I don't know what the tradition is for the St. Patrick's Day parade. Okay, beer. They specifically mentioned in the rules that alcohol is not permitted, so just.
Well, it's not alcoholic beer.
But there is a party after at Lansdowne Park, by the
Get a
way.
beer cannon and just.
So there is a party after, and the party after probably has beer. So anyways, it runs from 11 to 12:30, so it's not a very long parade. We have to ride between 8 and 10:45. So anyways, not a big deal, easy thing to do. Saturday morning, we won't do a kilowatts and coffee that week, but we'll do that instead. March 31st to April 2nd, this is, oops, I forgot to put the full name in there, but it's a salon du véhicule et loisirs électriques de l'Outaouais. So this will run March 31st to April 2nd. And this is the same promoter that did Gatineau last year, and this is the same promoter that's working with us on the show in the fall at EY Center, okay? So when I say looking for Teslas here, I have a Model X already. We're looking for Teslas that are in very good shape, okay, and that are not purple.
Why not purple?
Someone's getting towed there. So not purple and not and in very good shape. So so if anybody, so we're looking for a newer Model S. If we could get a plant, that would be great. So like I said, we have a Model X. I'll bring in my Model Y if it's not an issue for me. So we're looking for a Model 3. So I talked to our friends at 20 Graham Toyota or 20 Graham EV, and they only have one Tesla left right now. So I'm not sure if they're going to have any. If they do have some at that time, we'll be able to bore them. But otherwise, we're going to look for Teslas elsewhere. So we're looking for volunteers for the booth and also for test drives. And the test drives will be run by l'EVCO, again, like they were last fall. So
You have to be bilingual like last time. You run
you do not have to be bilingual.
Okay.
You do not have to be bilingual. So that was a mistake. Anyways, you do not have to be bilingual. Okay, so but we'll be looking for volunteers, and we have a sign-up sheet already set up for that. We'll send information to volunteers about that to explain what needs to happen for you to be on the list of volunteers. Okay, so you have to register with l'EVCO, and there's a free you can register for free as a member of l'EVCO. But you have to at least be registered as a member to be able to do test drives, okay? That's a bit like us with our test drives. You want it to be official EVCO members for liability reasons and things of that nature. Okay, the insurance, yeah. Okay, so I would encourage you to, we'll send an email soon on this, but please sign up and help us out. These people here, by the way, for the event in the fall, it will be l'EVCO that will be doing the test drives for us, okay? There's two reasons for that. Reason number one is they have a system that allows us to drive many, many more test drives over a weekend. So if you look at Gatineau, there were somewhere around 600 to 700 test drives done over one weekend. The system we have set up with EnviroCenter can't deal with that kind of number, okay? So they've got a system in place. They've got people who are used to doing events like that. So the same people that are doing Gatineau and did Gatineau last year and are doing a bunch of other shows this year will be coming to Ottawa to do our show. Okay, so that's why we're using l'EVCO, and that makes it much easier for us because dealing with the test drives is at that scale especially is quite the challenge. I would expect that we would do a lot more test drives than what they did in Gatineau, because I'm expecting a lot more people in Ottawa than was in Gatineau. Okay, so but that's later in the year. So these two are the short-term ones that we're looking at. After that, we have the Sustainability Fair in Kemptville that we've been attending for quite a number of years already. So Jeff is actually, it doesn't say in his thing here, but in the publicity and the notices about the event, he's actually mentioning that there will be test drives, okay? Last year he didn't, so we did do a fair amount of test drives anyways, somewhere around 30, I believe. But this year we should be able to do more because it will be announced that we'll have a test drive. We'll also have a booth. In that case here, we should have our friends at Enviro Center to help us with this event, okay? Living Will show at the UI Center. So that's a show that's going to be using one of the rooms at the UI Center, not a huge show. But they're going to be having a bunch of different things that have to do with environmental stuff, and some of the stuff is a bit more less scientifically founded, if I can put it that way. But anyways, most of the stuff will be about living green, right? So solar providers and that kind of stuff. So the idea there is we'll have a booth with one car, with a tent, with the panel, the electrical panel and all that. And we'll use that event to get people to attend the other events we're doing where we're going to be able to do test drives. So we'll do test drives here, but we'll talk to people and we'll tell them about what we're doing and encourage them to attend the other events that we have throughout the rest of the year, okay? So, and again, this is what I mentioned before, October 26th and 29th. We've already started talking to a bunch of dealers about this. It's looking quite good. But again, this is quite preliminary at this point, right? But we expect to have half of the UI Center. So if you look at the UI Center from the front, room 1 and 2, hall 1 and 2 is what we're going to have. So 80,000 square feet of space that we'll be occupying. So Nicolas and I were at the boat show on the weekend, trying to see if there were any electric boats, and there were a few. And because we want them to come over to this show also, right? So this will be essentially how do you electrify everything in your life, okay? So the other thing, like we always have been doing for, it's got to be a year and a half now, I guess. Kilowatts and coffee. I guess. For you?
Yeah, I started in the late spring.
Late spring, okay.
It was cold.
So anyways, we're gonna do the Moulin again. Every weekend, except the 11th, when we're at St. Patrick's, right? St. Patrick's Parade. But we're gonna do that because the garage, as Mike likes to say, is warm and free. So, and there's charging available for those who need it. So we'll do that again over the next month. And then we'll probably in April, we'll start going to different locations.
It's nicer out. When we can stand outside without our face hurting,
Yeah.
then we'll start going to other places. But for now, we'll stay in the garage.
Okay, so that's
And the Moulin has really good pastries.
it's a nice place. Plus, it's big inside. You can take tables and,
Yeah.
and we could do this. They're not all cramped
And
in.
good
So
coffee.
it's a good location. It really is. It really is. So reminder for you that we have a YouTube channel. I would encourage you to go over and look at the stuff we have there. We have 60 some subscribers as of this morning.
Sure, yeah.
And so again, we have our 62. So we have our monthly meeting recordings on there. We have a few other things on there, like the kilowatt and coffee thing you see there. And a few other features that we're putting in there. So I would encourage you to go there and look at the content and subscribe.
If you're watching us on YouTube right now, thank you for watching. And this is where your meeting ends because we're going to do a roundtable. So if you want to participate in the roundtable, you have to show up live in person or virtually online. But thank you for watching and we'll see you next month.